What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you go to coinmastery.com/invest. Join the newsletter list. Get synced up. Get ready to rock. Happy Monday. Hope you're all doing well. Nice little rainy day we got here, California style. All right. Well, today we are talking about a little bit about some coins. We're getting a little bit back into the price action as we watch this Bitcoin, kind of the week of reckoning, as you want to call it this week. We're going to see some interesting action over the next 48 hours, especially as a lot of people pay their taxes, do not pay their taxes, whatever may shake out, or nothing may happen at all. But we're going to watch this, talk a little bit about Ethereum. I want to talk about EOS in kind of an interesting light as it relates to how markets have pattern recognition. Talk a little bit about Cardano in the same light. Give a little bit of a snapshot of the overall market, and then a couple bigger picture stuff with where we're at, kind of macro pictures of, comparing this to the internet. But I think that's just something that I've really been thinking a lot about, where this is going and when the next big run is going to be. Call it alt run, whatever you want, bubble, whatever you want to call it. But that's something that I'm going to be talking a lot more about, because I think that's really the big question mark for a lot of people in getting that discussion going. So let's kick it off. Happy Monday. Hit the thumbs up button. Why not? Let's just do it. So you can see here, looking at the 4 hour on Bitfinex, I'm going to keep these charts as simple as possible moving forward. And for anybody listening on the podcast, it's very much an open blank canvas. We're looking at the Bitcoin chart. The only line that really matters, in my opinion, is the downward log trend line, because we're looking at a pretty good size time frame, and we are approaching this trend line. We had a pretty bullish weekend, I should say Friday, Saturday, Sunday, followed very quickly by a pretty severe drop off in the last, let's call it 12 to 24 hours, where we came back down to this 7,900, broke down below the 8,000 US dollar level. Now, the next big level to watch is right here, which is, I would call that 7,500. This whole zone is going to be considered a buy zone for many. I guess you could say below that if you want to get really cute about this resistance level. But this is where most people are going to be looking at pulling it back up. This plays into a lot of different Elliott waves, RSIs, everything kind of culminates in this. The way I'm going to look at this, because none of this is professional advice, obviously, I have to say that every time. It's just my opinion. What I would do is, in situations like this, is you wait and you don't try to catch the bottom. You don't what's called knife catching. It's better to wait, make sure that this support holds, see that it bounces, and then inevitably it'll come back, retest it, and then you want to see it hopefully come back up with a lot of volume, right? If it's a V-shaped bounce, there's just a huge amount of volume, so be it, but you want to wait for that confirmation, right? Remember what we talked about last week? It's so important to not get caught up in this micro moment of when the reversal happens. Wait for the confirmations. Wait to show that this is now a strong level of support. Wait for it to come up, and then get your gains in the middle here, whether it be short-term or if you believe that this is a long-term entry. But that's the way I would do it. I would not try to time it, because for all I know, I bet you everybody is going to be looking at this level, all the way from the big traders down to the retail people. Everyone's going to be looking at 7,500. That always makes it, it never ends up playing out exactly how you'd think. That's how we're going to be looking at, but really this trend line, and I guess you could make a case for some of the moving averages that are going to be happening, especially on the daily charts, but to a certain extent, the 4 hour. But I'm more interested in this support level in the short term, seeing if we can get down here, hopefully get enough steam to break through this trend line and go off to the races. So that's where we're looking at on Bitcoin's side. Now, Ethereum has been kind of doing the same stuff, but Ethereum's typically been leading the charge. Let me take the volume off here. between really in the whole market. Ethereum's been showing up and just doing really well, and it's showing a lot of bullish signs, almost too bullish. It's almost looking like too. It's coming up too quickly, and so you're seeing it have the same sell-off, same chart because they're both USD as Bitcoin. No surprises there, but in this case, I would defer to Bitcoin. I think that when you're looking at major market trend changes, Bitcoin is really where you want to see. That's where the action is going to be. Once the reversal has been established, that's when you can look at Ethereum and Litecoin to gauge what's going to pop first, right? If you're looking for more of a quick trade type of situation, you can then move away from Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is typically where the overall market shift is going to be. Now let's talk about EOS for a second. Again, I'm keeping these charts super, super simple. In fact, there's nothing on this because I do want to be able to just keep it clean. The big news on EOS, obviously it had an insane run up. I'm on the 5 minute. That's not going to help anyone here. And an insane run up last week, right? We saw this huge spike, and it's approaching down to this pretty big resistance level at $7.27 on Bitfinex, give or take. But it peaked on the 12th, 13th, and the big the news rumor, whatever you want to call it, was that on the 15th there was going to be a snapshot, an airdrop. So on the 15th, for every EOS you owned, you would get a 1-to-1 snapshot for a token, right? An Ethereum token related to EOS. And that was one of the big stories that potentially drove a lot of this run up. Now, what's interesting is that in the past, over the last year, and this is, all the way up to, I think the most recent big one was probably the Z Classic Bitcoin private fork. And there's been obviously plenty of these, but you see huge run-ups, but often the game theory gets pretty close to the snapshot date, and then there's an immediate sell-off. Now, what we're seeing now is that you're obviously seeing the run-up, but you're seeing the game theory play out earlier and earlier as it relates to any of these airdrops, assuming that is the leading factor behind this, meaning there are people that waited. I'm assuming it's right at this, let's call that 2 p.m. on the 15th, 2 p.m. Pacific, waited right until the last minute. And then there was obviously a sell-off that happened, but it wasn't severe at all. And there was a lot of downside well before that snapshot happened. So it became a riskier move when you got closer. The other big thing is that because EOS is on Bitfinex, you can short it. And so that's something that has never really been a huge factor where if there's a big snapshot to be had, being able to short against the underlying asset adds a whole new level of game theory to the chart, to the price in itself. So what does that mean? Assuming that this run-up is purely because of this airdrop situation, the further along into crypto we get, the less effective or less predictable that run-up will be in terms of where the price ends up being. It seems to me like there's probably more to it than just the airdrop, right? There's probably some other factors at play here because we didn't see a full retracement yet. But moving forward over the next 6 months, year, 2 years, the more you see airdrop, the less it's going to provide a real predictable pump that you can, gauge on and say, oh, well, I know the snapshot's happening on the 15th, so I just got to sell it right before the 15th and I'll be all set. It's backing out further and further and further, and these pumps are just going to smooth themselves out, and it's going to get baked into the price over the longer term as the information gets trickled out. And that's just the nature of markets. That's just how things are going to happen. So it's always good to recognize these because I think it's one of those things where fundamentals versus tactics. Tactics will come and go, and most people try to chase the tactics, but the fundamentals, which is, are you looking at is it a solid entry time? Are you buying into a FOMO run? Are you buying into a dip? Do you have a good reason to buy it? Versus tactics, which is, oh, there's an airdrop. It's going to do this. I know that's what always happens. That's inevitably how you get, you end up losing money. So we'll see how this goes. If I had to guess, I would do the same thing as any other chart, right? You look at this on the 21st, this resistance level, that's where I would expect to see some support on EOS's side once this airdrop shakes out, and then go from there. The next level would probably be to clear out this chart right around $6, give or take. Now, the other one is on Cardano. You can see that Cardano is kind of an interesting case study. I think Cardano is mildly controversial in the crypto community in the sense that some people think it's awesome. Like they love, what's his name, Charles Hopkinson, right? Is the founder, brilliant guy. And people love the tech. People really like that it's cheap, that it's got a high market cap. On the other side, you got a lot of people that don't like it. But fundamentals aside, for a second, meaning how good of a product team, community this is. When you look at the chart, so we got resistance back here that led to support. It was a little bit off on we're on the 4 hour here, a little bit off on that late November support level, but this March 18th bottom V here, pretty close. Here's what's interesting. What you're going to see a lot of these charts where there's a huge rundown, or like drawdown, I should say, almost a full retracement. This isn't quite a full retracement yet. Hopefully it doesn't get there, but you see it start to make its way up. And this is when you start to see some accumulation. Inevitably, you're going to see a large pump of volume that is hopefully an accumulation pump, which is typically what happens in this sort of kind of overall upswing. And many of you can feel that in the sentiment. You can obviously see that in the charts. But what happens is when you get these big accumulation patterns and then you see it come down, and then this lower, the price is higher than the previous low valley here. When it goes up after a big pump like this, you can pretty much expect that there's going to be a spike in price following that. And the way that's described is that volume precedes price. So whenever you see a huge spike in volume, typically, as long as the price is going up, it's going to jack the price up. You're going to see a retracement, and then you're going to see a second pump. That's typically how it works on the longer term scale, right? That you got to go out to obviously here on the 4 hour. And this turned out to be because it was listed on Huobi, or one of the reasons why, which is one of the up and coming biggest exchanges over in China, which can add a lot of new volume. The jury's still out on how good that volume is, if it's legit or not. But this is a really interesting pattern. So when you're looking at, if you're looking at buying up altcoins over the next week, 2 weeks, month, whatever, if you're looking to accumulate, the one thing you can do, I would say Cardano's got an okay chart. It's kind of late in the game at this point, but you see it bottom out. Go look at the volume and look for big spikes, but look for the price to kind of come back to where it is. But look for these big volume spikes. And as the price starts to trickle up, that means somebody's buying up a lot of it. And eventually there's going to be a very, very large run on that price, hopefully. And so that's just something that you can keep in mind and you can keep an eye on. Now let's look at the market cap. Our fun friend, 330 billion market cap, slowly taking a quick vacation down to 320. No surprises there. Meanwhile, the dominant Bitcoin dominance is increasing. And there's nothing new here, right? I think that there's a lot of people in a holding pattern waiting for this price to play out, waiting for the tax thing to play out, just really waiting for this chart to figure itself out, because it's very difficult. There's a lot of unknowns in the entire market right now. And I think that that's exactly what you're seeing really across the board. I think this whole week, you're going to see booms and busts. You're going to see some big moves, just like we saw last week. And there's just not a whole lot to, report, to be perfectly honest. I think that anyone who tells you, oh, this is definitely the accumulation phase of an altcoin season, they're guessing just as much as you are. And I think that that's the truth of the matter. And it's good to research it. Maybe you buy in a tiny bit, but realize this is a very, very, very like uncertain time right now. And there's always going to be better times to buy in. So if you buy in now, so be it. But I think I would encourage people to find a really good reason. Are you trying to find a reason to buy in? I guess is a good question to ask yourself. Okay, now let's talk about very quickly. This is more of just a memory jog. On CNBC, they talk about how Bitcoin's like the internet in the 1980s. And they talk about how Bitcoin's more like the protocol and less like the stocks. And I think that's kind of, this has been talked about to death, in my opinion. But I think the idea that I'm really trying to hash out over is, when is the next big run going to happen? And I do believe that there's going to be a huge third kind of bubble for cryptocurrency that's going to be way, way, way bigger than 2017. And it's also going to be, there's going to be way more coins. There's going to be way more people involved. There's going to be way more money. The market cap is just going to be astronomical. And I think that I keep coming back to this idea of what would it be like to be in 1991 or 1992 or 1994, 1998, 1999? Like how could you possibly capitalize the most on that? And the reason why I keep coming back to this is because if you don't keep putting that into your brain, you're not going to be subconsciously thinking about it. You're not going to be looking at your information through that lens. And I think the way that I think that this is going to go down, and I'll do a more formalized version of this, is like a presentation, is that, so in 2013, the bubble was that there were just more coins, right? It was just, you had a protocol, Bitcoin, and then you just had more things that were built. You had Counterparty that was built on top of it. You had some other coins that were kind of using the same sort of blockchain technology, but Ethereum didn't exist yet. And it was just, there was more coins. And it was just kind of speculative. What is this thing? That obviously retraced. And then we had 2017, and that was built on this idea of, okay, now we've got all this new technology. We've got these companies, so to speak, and like it was look what blockchain is going to do. It's this potential, but nobody's really knew what exactly, like what problems is it really solving. Was it just a hammer looking for a nail? What exactly is it? And that's a big reason why of the retracement. And then there's enough inherent demand that dropped it to that level. I think the third big one, the $100,000 Bitcoin, the $25 trillion market cap, like the big, massive bubble thing, is going to happen when you start to see a lot of these coins, or the coins that haven't been built yet, start to solve real world problems. And so you start to have people that can actually use the products on a basic level. They understand that it solves a real problem, so that they go out and they can understand why they should go buy the coin, just the same way they understood why they should go buy the stock. And I'm not saying they should understand it in the sense that they understand the tech or anything, but it's a story that they can believe. It gets them past the idea of speculation and into the realm of, oh my gosh, this is a real company. This is actually going to do something because whether it makes money or it solves real problems or whatever it may be. And what you're going to see is a siloing of all of these coins into categories. The same way in the 90s, you saw the siloing of the internet into things like search engines, not really social networks until the 2000s, but search engines for sure. Directories was a big one. Shopping was a big one. E-commerce, auction sites. They all kind of siloed. And as soon as one category had somebody who proved a model that worked, that people used, and that had the potential to generate cash and or engagement, hundreds of copycats showed up within that niche. And then somebody else figured out a use case that worked, like let's say e-commerce. Then you got 5,000 e-commerce sites that came out. The same thing is going to happen, in my opinion, with this. And this is what the next big thing is going to be, where somebody's going to figure out the crypto for, let's call it, I'm trying to find like decentralized computing. Now, I know that's kind of an abstract concept for the average person. You walk down the street in any country and you say, hey, look, we're all going to share computer power. That's a little out there still for people. But that could easily be a category where you got Golem, you got Scicoin, you got, Elastos, or whatever. There's tons of these out there where once one of them works, there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds. Same with privacy coins, or same with identity, or same with payments or credit cards. But there's going to be one winner that people use, but that won't necessarily be the winner. That's just going to create the categories. And by creating the categories, that's what's going to get the retail investors back in. That's when you're going to get 100 million people buying into cryptocurrency. And that's when you're going to get a huge bubble. And then, of course, the reason why it's going to go up disproportionately bigger than the stock market is because those valuations will not be able to be compared to regular companies yet. Because one of the biggest problems in crypto is the idea of equity versus token economics. Meaning, if you are an equity holder in a company, like let's say you own equity in, 0x, and then there's a billion tokens available. Those are differing incentives, right? There's people that want different things to happen in terms of how the token price works, with how the equity works, with how the mergers work, with how the business decisions are made. And that's going to become very complicated as you try to compare it to something like an equity, like a company, or a company that's on the, let's say, call it the New York Stock Exchange. Because of that disparity, that's what's going to allow for the bubble to happen. And that's what's going to allow for the huge uptick in price and everything along those lines. So what this means, in my opinion at least, is that I think we have a while to go until the next major run. And that doesn't mean that we won't see some serious gains potentially in many of these coins. But until you start seeing some real use cases, and what you really want to look for is once you see something create a viable use case, once you start seeing all the copycats come out, that's when you know that the next bubble is coming. That's the trigger, the thing that you should really be watching, and that people stop looking at crypto as like one bucket, and they start looking at it like, I'm investing in banking, the individualized banking sector of crypto, like Omise Go or whatever. Oh, I'm investing in exchanges like Binance or whatever. Once you get to that, because there's copycats, that's when it's going to go big. So I don't know. I'm going to continue to flesh this idea out, but I know that's on a lot of people's minds, and that's something that many people are wondering, like, when's the next thing? When's the next altcoin season? And whatever happens with the interim price, it could go way up, it could go way down, but the big mega retail money is going to come in when we get some of these that really work, and then you start to get copycats on top of that. That's when it's going to go huge. And maybe potentially when some of these start to make some revenue, that's when it's going to get absolutely bananas. You like that? Okay. Last thing, I thought this was, I'm a huge Casey Neistat fan. I think that he is an incredibly inspirational person, and I'm just in awe of his persistence and ability to create the amount of content that he has created in his life. But more importantly, he did a video with Jack Conte, who is the founder of Patreon. And Jack did a kind of a pitch video that went viral. In case you saw it, invited him over. And the video is that Jack says, hey, I got this idea where I want creators to find a way to be able to create stuff, namely, let's call it video, and make a living doing it. And because that is a broken system. And I'm not just saying this as a creator. Like I don't monetize my videos. I don't charge for class. I don't do anything. Speaking of which, if anyone ever asks you for money on like Telegram that's not me. It's all scammers. Okay. So just please note that, I don't monetize that way. This is just an audience thing for me right now. But that's a broken business model. Like YouTube has a huge problem with ads. Video in general has a huge problem with ads. And the idea is that Casey has an audience, and he also has a huge production studio that he's building. Jack has the idea, the fire, and potentially a network with Patreon. And they want to fuse those together where people can come and find a way to create content that goes directly to consumers, and they can make it into essentially a decentralized system that can move the money straight from the users to the creators without the middle people, potentially without the YouTubes of the world, which would be, I think that's a matter of time. Next 10 years, I don't think something like YouTube will be around. And then also obviously the payment systems. Now they don't talk about crypto in this video, which I think some people were a little confused about, but they talk about this idea that this is a huge, huge idea. I mean, we're talking like tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars that if unlocked, that all that money, which is essentially advertising money, can go into this type of solution. And this type of solution is exactly what cryptocurrency can do. And so I think it's really helpful to see videos like this. I'm obviously a biased Casey Neistat fan, but this is the key, especially to macro, but really in anything. When you look at, you hear all the stats, 90% of people fail as entrepreneurs, 90% of traders fail, 90% of people in finance fail, it's blah, 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 blah. Like there's all these stats. But what the top 5% of people, the reason why they crush the competition is because they can read between the lines and they can predict the future. And this is a good example of that. They don't talk about crypto in this. They don't say, hey, we're going to release this cryptocurrency and here's what it's going to do. They're putting out a video and they're saying, here's a huge idea that could be big and we're really excited about it. And then you can watch this and go back and say, if that was $100 billion opportunity, what are some ways that they could solve it? And then you you connect the dots. You bring all that together, and that you can make a bet on something like this very early on, that this is going to be what the world will look like in 10 years. And that's how you can get the Bitcoins of 2011, the things that are trading at 0.001 cent, or the things that haven't even been created yet. But at least you know where to look. And I think that this is such a critical thing to try to consistently, it's a skill to cultivate, which is, how do you read between the lines? How do you see something that's an opportunity that is going to happen and back that into what is a potential way that could happen? Because I don't know. I don't know. Will they use an existing crypto? I don't know. Will they build their own new one? Maybe. Will this be nothing for 3 or 4 years? Probably. Maybe it might take a long time. Maybe it won't even be a cryptocurrency. But there are huge problems on the internet right now. Huge problems with video, with transactions, with everything, payments. And the more you can expose yourself to this and start to put together the pieces outside of the world that we are used to, outside of scrolling through CoinMarketCap, think about this just as a blank canvas. What would that look like? Then you start to make your investment decisions on a fundamental. That's how you become a macro investor, long term. That's how you can make the $500 turn into $5 million when you can go that big on that big of an idea that early. Not saying you will, obviously. It's not, no promises or anything, but that's the key. And it's not. I think the other important thing is, I know it's not a natural thing. Right? It's not natural for a lot of people who naturally connect the dots. I tend to be naturally like that, but I'm not naturally good at other stuff. I think other people naturally are really good at certain things that I'm not good at, and vice versa. But the more you try to connect the dots yourself, the more you can make the big long-term plays, the payoff in a huge way. And it's not always about the pre-sale. It's not always about finding the hidden gem. It's just knowing what to be looking for. That's the key. So go check it out. I'll link to it. It's also got a great video about calendar anorexia, which I think is just like Ryan Holiday wrote an awesome essay, something that I very much try to aspire to. Cool. So with that, gonna cruise out, gonna do some podcasts today. And I appreciate you guys hanging out today. Happy Monday. I will catch you tomorrow. All right. Peace out.